Hello there, and welcome back to the Natural History Cover podcast. In our spookiness, we've got dead Aaron. He didn't make it from last week, but we thought we'd do a Halloween episode with him anyway. He is since decayed and is just sitting there. It's a real shame. But we thought we'd bring in a special guest for our Halloween episode.
Boo!
Ah! Well timed. Hidden behind the mask, it's Phil Barber. Hello, Phil.
Hello.
Being very scary there. So, what we thought we'd do this week is we're going to bring you our usual trio of Halloween species and tell you a little bit. Stop doing that, it's freaky. Tell you a little bit about each one as we go through. But first off, have either of you been up to anything other than decomposing? The pair of you look like you've really lost, like a lot of weight in the face there. It's either of you been up to anything? Both dead on me. No, what have you been doing?
Really busy with invert shows, 2 in one weekend, and then I've got another one in another week. And so, yeah, there's lots of invert shows going on, including my own one, which is a Halloween invert show hosted by myself and my parents coming up.
Very cool.
I had an invert show, Phil. They were eating the flesh from my decaying bones.
I think you need to tell the full story of why your costume is not the costume that you wanted.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. This is actually what happened to me. The time it took waiting for my costume to turn up. So, shall I take this off to talk?
You can't. Well, yeah. Go on then.
So, so I actually ordered a Spider-Man costume that like Venom was like over it. The symbiote, if you know what that is, guys at home. And unfortunately, whoever is supposedly shipping it to me decided to use a company that will not be named. Probably best to not name them, who probably aren't actually gonna get to me. I've been waiting 2 weeks for this costume to turn up, and it hasn't turned up. So not a very happy Aaron right now.
No, but you've got a good enough like skull mask. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's all right, isn't it, actually?
Yeah. Well, shall we make our way into our creepy species for this week?
It's the creature feature.
Well, we're into this week's creature features. I believe, Aaron, you are starting things off.
I am, yeah. I'm
starting things off. What are we looking at? What's our first spooky creature?
Right. Well, this week, guys, we're looking at a really cool animal, actually, Avarca calicivora, which doesn't really sound too Halloweeny, does it? Really? If you don't know what the Latin name is, it probably doesn't strike fear in you. There goes my spider. Anyway, and at first glance, this spider, not that spider, may not actually physically seem all that worthy of a spot on our Halloween special. However, we're going to cover them anyway, because I think there's a good reason to put them up there.
Okay.
So females, they grow to sizes of about 4 to 7 millimeters and are almost entirely grayish brown, save for a faint red tint to their faces. The males are marginally smaller at 3 to 6 millimeters in size, sharing that dull kind of coloration, but with
You're really selling it.
Yeah, but it does have a blood red facial kind of what would be the word, coating. Yeah, with patches of white bristle-like hair above the principal eyes and on either side of the anterior eyes, as well as just above the feet. Now, Avarca calicivora is a species of jumping spider, and the whole point of this podcast, of this creature feature that I'm doing for Halloween, was because I had a Spider-Man outfit on its way. So it was all related, and this nameless delivery company have really let the side down.
Named after some sort of god of in Greek pantheon.
They let him down too, terribly. But yeah, it's a species of jumping spider, which is a genus that is pretty well represented across the planet. Now, where this particular species originates from, however, is Lake Victoria in Kenya and Uganda. And this locale remains the only place in the world where you'll find them in the wild.
Yeah.
The lake and the habitats it supports is pulsing with life in the form of invertebrates, providing plenty of options for them to dine upon as the voracious little predator that they are. Now, on to why this particular spider species has been included as a Halloween creature feature, because so far it's not sounding very impressive, is it?
Well, no, dull brown spider with a bit of red on it.
Dull brown spider, 3 to 7 millimeters, probably nothing to get worried about. But when I said that they are voracious little predators, I bet you're all thinking that these little guys are agile, violent, powerful killers that ensnare all manner of invertebrate life, right? Well, wrong. They are incredibly fussy eaters. In fact, midges of the genus Chauboridae are ridiculously numerous in the Evarcha calicivora range, and they are near identical in size and look to the animal that this spider predates on. Yet these spiders completely ignore them. So fussy are these spiders that just any insect will not do. Even one so similar that you and I would barely be able to notice the difference. No, these spiders are actually considered to be Anopheles specialists. So that is Anopheles, a genus of mosquitoes. Anopheles.
Anopheles.
That makes sense. Yeah, Anopheles. Anopheles specialists. So they're a mosquito hunter. And in doing so, they have developed something of an irresistible thirst for blood. Yes, Evarcha calicivora is far better known by its common name, the vampire spider. They seek their prey out via a powerful sense of smell. Indeed, they're one of the few animals known to select a target based on the smell of what is sat in that animal's stomach. The smell drives them to seek out fresh-fed mosquitoes and human feet. Now,
and human feet.
Well, they're only 3 to 7 millimeters, aren't they? They're not really looking for much else. They're not like, we're not talking about huntsmen that can reach your knee.
No.
So yeah, vampire spiders are so fussy. They ignore male mosquitoes and will only hunt females that have just fed on blood specifically, because females are the only ones that drink blood. Even females that have been fed on sugar are not part of the menu. They really are a contender for one of the world's most diet-specific creatures. I know toddlers that will accept more variety in food than these spiders will. In fact, experiments have shown that this species will choose Anopheles mosquitoes over all other prey, and when given the choice, will only hunt the blood-fed ones. This preference for blood consumption even overrides their preference for prey size. So they won't care, big or small. If it's full of blood, they'll go for it. And in perhaps for this spider, a cruel twist of fate, but lucky for us, whilst these spiders do actively seek out human feet, it's probably more dangerous to them than it is to us.
I imagine so.
Their bite is not powerful enough to penetrate human flesh. So, like I say, whilst they'll come looking for your feet, they're not going to be getting any blood out of them.
I feel really sorry for those poor spiders.
Because they're going to end up squished.
They're going to see what would be the equivalent of, like, I don't know, an Empire State's worth of food for a human, walking towards them in the form of presumably human blood.
Yeah.
And then they just get flattened by it.
Yeah, and that is true. So that is my shortened creature feature for this creature feature special on Halloween. I'm looking forward to what you guys are bringing to the table.
Well, I've never... Phil, have you ever heard of a vampire spider?
I can't say I have. I've heard of vampire ants, but not a vampire spider.
Yeah. I've never heard of vampire ants. So we'll have to hear that from you sometime.
Yeah.
I found these guys by accident because I was looking for... So what I was actually looking for is there's a couple spider species that are named after Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland, who are the 3 actors that played Spider-Man. Yeah. So I was looking for them. And then I came across ghost spider, which is actually a species of spider.
Yeah.
But it's also it's, if you guys know the multiverse or the Spider-Verse, if you want to call it that, very well. In another multiverse, on another Earth, Peter Parker actually is an amputee who Doc Connors uses the experiment on. Peter Parker becomes a lizard, and his best friend Gwen Stacy is the one that gets bit by the spider and becomes a spider person. And then in other variations, they actually exist in the same universe. But I found Ghost Spider, and then just quite by accident, looking at Ghost Spider, I found like Vampire Spider. So I was like, okay, we're going with Vampire Spider because that's Halloweeny, and I'm gonna have my Spider-Man costume, or am I not? Yeah, but there we go.
That's really cool. Yeah. Phil, it's your turn to bring us your creepy species. What have you got for us?
My creepy. Well, I'm going to introduce my species with a bit of a description that I found for it, which I found quite intriguing. That see what you think to it. So, if I was to describe this animal as frightful, repulsive, able to spit venom, it will leap several feet into the air to attack you. It can sting with its tongue, and it will kill you with its poison breath. What might you think I might be talking about? And bear in mind, none of this is really true.
Someone who spent too much time watching Jurassic Park and thinks that's what the Dilophosaurus is.
I was going to go some sort of like Greek god, or like a chimera sort of thing,
Yeah, or those venom wyverns from Ark.
Yeah, some sort of thing, mythical creature.
This is all folklore about the Heloderma suspectum, or the Gila monster. So both names, both its scientific name and its common name, sound fairly scary. It now is Gila monster, although when you see it spelled, you might think it's Gila monster, as it's spelled Gila. But the word Gila actually it was named after the river Gila in Arizona. So that's where it got its common name from. And then, monster, because people think it's a bit of a monster. So, and then it's scientific name, the Heloderma. That is Greek, and it's helos for stud, and then derma for skin. Because if you look at a Gila monster, its skin its scales are kind of studded. That's because they are osteoderms, so they're bony little plates in the scales, so they're armored. So, and as a description of the animal, it's the largest lizard in the US, and so it ranges from sort of Arizona, California down to Mexico. So gets around sort of 55 centimeters long, and it is venomous as well. So it is a venomous lizard. So it doesn't spit its venom, but if it bites you, it's going to be fairly painful. I think. But it's a beautiful, beautiful animal. Now, I've never worked with Heloderma at all. I don't know if you two have at all, but
no,
I've always looked at them for their wonderful, wonderful lizards, both the Gila monster and their close cousin, the beaded lizard, which is Heloderma horridum. So, and so called beaded lizard because again, it looks like it's covered in beads along its skin, along its scales. But the Gila monster is kind of bright orange to almost pink sometimes, barred with black. And so I think absolutely stunning lizards. So they're not necessarily the fastest of lizards going around, but they're quite steady, and they don't give up sometimes, and they will happily climb up cactus as well to find food. So and the food can be almost anything that fits in its mouth. Pretty much. So, eggs and birds, chicks, all sorts of things. But it uses its venom very, very differently to things like snakes. So where snakes have kind of almost needle-like fangs for injecting venom, the Gila monster, it actually comes up through its lower jaw. Its lower jaw teeth, and it basically chews its venom into its prey. But a really interesting part of the venom is that although it's agonizing to people, but not really, probably not going to die from it. If it was to bite you, you're just going to regret it because it's going to hurt a lot. But its venom is actually used in the treatment of type 2 diabetes.
No way.
And that's because based on their wild diet and stuff, they should get diabetes, and they don't. And it was found that there's a protein within the venom that essentially stops them from getting diabetes. So that protein got isolated and is now used, has been for about 30 years or so, been used in the treatment of type 2 diabetes, which I think is really, really interesting.
That's amazing.
As we always hear about venoms and even poisons as being dangerous and a killer thing and all this and the other, but actually so many of them are used to cure our ailments. So they're absolutely fantastic. Well, for me, little animals, I think really, really beautiful. They got the name suspected when they were discovered in 1869 by a paleontologist, Edward Drinker Cope.
Another one of Cope's findings.
Yeah, where he thought they were kind of monstrous and basically, really thought they were suspicious, hence suspect them. Suspicious of the lizard. So, but you can, they are a near threatened species, unfortunately. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misunderstandings around them, but if you get a chance to ever see them, a few zoos in the UK do have Gila monsters or their close cousins, the bearded lizards. I think they're absolutely beautiful. And so when you do see them, they don't necessarily do a huge amount most of the day, but they are technically sort of diurnal, but mainly active kind of early in the morning is their sort of main activity period. And they do hibernate as well during the winter period too. But yeah, they don't jump feet in the air to attack you or to attack anything. They don't spit their venom. They can't sting with their tongue. And they certainly don't breathe sort of poisonous breath at you either. But in a nutshell, that's a quick insight to a fantastic is the Gila monster.
They are really cool.
They are cool, yeah.
We almost, at the zoo that you and I worked at, we almost had some bearded lizards. But
okay.
They didn't want to go down the route of building, something that would contain a venomous reptile at the in that particular building. So the whole idea got scrapped. But they're such a really cool lizard. I think Painting Zoo's ones, they're in their desert house. They look, well, if they still have the desert house.
The desert house is still there, but it was under like some sort of renovation when we were there. There was no animals in there.
Well, hopefully they still have them there. But I think they're an awesome lizard, and you're right to have chosen them, Phil. I think they're pretty cool.
I think they're fantastic. Like I say, I've never worked with them, but I would love to work with them at some point, whether it be the Healers or the Beardeds. Both look fantastic. I think the last time I saw them was at Drayton Manor. So they've got Gila monster and they've got bearded lizard, and so it was really cool to see the two sort of next to each other.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen either of those species actually moving. Whenever it completely blows the thought of them being able to jump right out.
You look at them; they're always just sitting around.
Yeah. The only time I've seen a bearded lizard, it was the Gila monsters I've seen just completely sedentary. But the only time I've seen a bearded lizard, and I can't remember where it was, but that one was on the move. But
you actually saw one moving
slowly. Slowly. If you walk past, he wasn't moving. But if you actually stopped and watched, he was just very slowly ambling along.
If you slowed down time enough, it's just about moving. Right, well, it's my turn now to give you a spooky species. Although this is one that I feel would actually warrant being afraid of. Your one is almost suicidal in that it's going to step under the foot of a human. Your one doesn't move, Phil. And you'd have to put your hand in its mouth and clamp its mouth down on your hand to actually get it to do anything to you. My one actually could have done you some harm.
Oh yeah,
I say could have. So ask most members of the public, and I think all three of us could probably easily come up with some thoughts on this one because we've all, let's say, worked or still work in zoos. To name a scary bird.
A scary bird.
Give me a scary bird, you two. A bird that people would say is terrifying.
People say online, I see it, cassowary all the time. I just don't find them scary. I mean, just treat them with respect. So a genuinely scary bird. Phil, if you can think of one, you can jump in because I'm struggling.
I think of individual ones. We used to have a pair of great horned owls, which would taking turns at they're trying to attack you from different angles, so that was quite scary.
Okay,
That's
But there was
true.
just 2 individuals.
I've worked with a pair of palm nut vultures that used to dive bomb me.
Think something a bit more that people would say that is terrifying. The most terrifying bird that most people would have had experience with.
I'd say like anywhere in the world, I ask someone that, and they're going to say cassowary.
Well, you know what? I have down on my list here. So most people might say an eagle, or even an ostrich, or maybe even a herring gull. But hands down, I would say that the one that most people tend to fear and recoil in fear from would be geese or swans. You think about how many people, or even a turkey, people tend to think that they are.
People think that swans can break your back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think that they are these ultimately terrifying animals. Well, these water birds seem to terrify people far more than most, and they aren't even that big. They're not. The biggest goose is going to come up to there on you, and the biggest swan's going to be there. I mean, swans, all right, they can be a bit more aggressive, but at the end of the day, imagine meeting a goose, or at least a relative of a goose, that was 2.5 meters in height.
Yeah, fair.
That's a pretty big goose.
Cool.
Well, meet Dromaeornis, otherwise known as the demon duck of doom.
Very cool.
And it gets that name for obvious reasons, just based on its size alone. But imagine if you will, wandering alone on the plains of Australia 60,000 years ago. You're one of the very first human inhabitants of this bizarre alien land. You've had a pretty rough time of it up to this point. You've seen rhino-sized wombats being attacked by the marsupial equivalent of leopards. That's terrified you. That sent you running. You've seen giant monitor lizards just annihilating things out of nowhere and tearing other people to pieces and other animals as well.
Nice.
So this hellscape that you've walked into is just awful, and everything is trying to kill you. Just when you think it can't get more bizarre, you stumble upon a giant bird towering over you with a huge beak that looks somewhat like a rugby ball sort of stuck on the face of a bird, sort of this huge domed beak to it. And you think, great, this is it. This is the end. I've survived this long, only to be eaten by a bird. It's not a giant predatory monitor lizard. It's not something with huge teeth and claws. And as this bird rears up towards you and honks, it sort of walks past this puny human to go and snack on some vegetation nearby to you, because in fact it's vegetarian. It's not really bothered by you, only for you to be taken out by a crocodile the next day when you go to get and drink. So the story of you as the prehistoric human in Australia ends very quickly at that point. But anyway, let's focus on the demon duck, shall we? So first off, they're not actually a duck. They are a relative of ducks and geese, so the Anseriformes, as they're known.
Right.
And you would think, though, looking at this bird, which has a huge bill, a long neck, a massive body, massive legs, tiny, tiny little wings, you would probably think it's more related to ostriches and cassowary and emu. So you would think it would be more related to those birds, but it is more closely related to ducks and geese, hence where the name, the demon duck of doom, has come into it. There were 9 species of these extraordinary birds spread across Australia, the largest being Dromaeornis sturtonii, and it could weigh up to 650 kilos.
Wow.
Yeah. How heavy were the lions you used to work with, Aaron?
Not that heavy.
About 230, maybe up to 250?
I would say Leo was... No, I reckon Lenny was probably about 250.
Yeah.
260.
So imagine 2 of those stapled together and a bit more on top. And this animal stands 3 meters tall. It was heavier than the moa from New Zealand and taller than the elephant bird from Madagascar.
Right.
So this was a monster of a bird.
Could it fly?
It's got tiny wings.
Tiny wings.
It's very much not flying.
Big bird, no, little wings.
I mean, everything can technically fly downwards if it goes off a cliff.
that was
the landing is the
There
issue.
you go. That's a stupid question.
So the type specimen, the original fossils that were found were a femur of one of these giant birds, and it was actually found 55 meters down in a well, at the very bottom of a well,
Right.
in Peak Downs, Queensland, and subsequently it was described by, we've mentioned Edward Drinker Cope on this episode. Well, I'm going to bring in the other, or not Othniel Charles Marsh, but another famous paleontologist of that era, Sir Richard Owen, who described them in 1872. And the name is derived from the ancient Greek, so dromos. Either of you guys want to take a guess at what dromos means? You may be aware of it in other animals.
Yeah, like dromaeosaur.
Yeah. Or dromedary. No? Phil?
It's nothing to do with
No. The Greek side of things is not my forte, but
so dromos basically means running or running a race.
Right, okay,
so dromaeosaur means fast thief. No, sorry, dromaeosaur means fast lizard. Or dromedary camel, running. It's part of their thing. And ornitho meaning bird. So it means running bird, basically. So these birds were around for a huge amount of time, and they saw the very first humans coming into Australia, and probably terrified them in that exact same sort of scenario. People accidentally coming across them. They lived in small groups. It's thought maybe ones and twos, but not much bigger than that. You're not going to see massive flocks of them roaming around. But obviously, they are no longer roaming around Australia today, and the largest bird in Australia is the emu, followed closely by the cassowary. But they did go extinct, obviously. Lots of different arguments have gone up over the years as to why these birds disappeared. The old thought of humans playing a part has come into it, and we probably did kill some of them or ate some of their chicks. But it's been suggested that because these birds, like the elephant bird and like the moa, had really long growth periods, so they grew very slowly for many, many years, it takes a very long time for that population to obviously increase.
Yeah.
So humans obviously wouldn't have helped with this. The other issue would have been that the climate was changing at this point. This is the end of the Pleistocene era. We're starting to see the sea that is there now between Northern Australia and Papua New Guinea is a sea. But before that point, there would have been open stretches of land or small islands. The climate would have been a lot more tropical and a lot more wet, and a lot more of Australia would have been far more habitable for animals like this. So a combination of all those different things, a bit like we talked about in the Irish elk episode, humans probably the ones that pushed it over the edge and certainly didn't help it. But these birds were probably on the way out, on their last legs, as it were.
Yeah.
Their goose was cooked, shall we say. So, yes, sadly, we no longer have the demon duck of doom with us, but I still think it is one of the best names for any prehistoric animal, hands down.
It is a cool name. It is a cool name.
That is a good name.
Well,
so have they done any? Because it's called the running bird, and obviously it was quite leggy. Have they done any estimations on what its pace would have been?
It probably didn't run that fast.
Yeah,
because it was such a big stocky animal.
It's quite a heavy set bird, isn't it?
But then again, Owen, at that time, well, let's face it, Sir Richard Owen was wrong on a few bits and pieces over the years. But so I wouldn't imagine they ran that fast. And if you think about the size of them, if you are that big, you weigh 650 kilos, you stand over 3 meters tall, there's very little that's going to try and have a go at you.
You don't need to run. No, that's true.
You're big and stocky, and I'd imagine a kick from one would have probably ended you pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that I did ask the important question about whether tiny winds could carry 650 kilograms of bird.
I mean, yeah, just strap a jet engine on it. I'm sure it'd be fine.
Anything flies if you kick it hard enough.
Well, there we go.
Very good.
That's the lesson we need to take away from today. Anything flies if you kick it hard enough.
I've been thoroughly enjoyed the Duck of Doom and Gila Monster. Sorry, Gila Monster. I did it again. I'm just
Right. Well, there's our trio of spooky species for this year's Halloween. So another one to add to them. Let's head into our emails.
Yeah.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right. Well, we're into this week's emails. Not our normal emails for this week, but we are still going to set you a question. And it's going to be, what is your spookiest or scariest species that you can think of? Phil, what's your spookiest or scariest species?
I think out of everything that I've got my own personal collection, probably one of the spookiest animals for most people is probably my camel spider, my solifugid. Something which I currently have a fluffy one. So actually, for me, it's really cute, I think. So, but there's a lot of misconceptions around camel spiders. They're not venomous. They don't get the size of people, and they're not going to attack you and stuff. But what is spooky about them is just some of their behavior and even how they molt. So when they molt, they look like they've died. So they go into this weird position where they fling their legs up in the air and literally they look dead. And they can be like that for months, even potentially a year or more before they actually molt. And
wow.
So it's quite, in some ways, quite spooky that way. My mum actually has one and hers has been in molt for nearly a year. And kids ask me like, Phil, has this died? I'm like, nope, it's fine. Leave it, leave it alone. It will hopefully eventually crawl out of that exoskeleton with a brand new one and start all over again. So fairly spooky, out of the way, just how they molt.
Absolutely.
Like they're coming back from the dead. It would look like if you weren't expecting that.
It just seems like a total drama queen sort of. I am going to throw my arms up in the air and I will molt for a year. And you're just going to deal with that.
That doesn't sound like something I've heard before. That's not common among spiders, is it?
No, and like to take that long and stuff. And a lot of people that buy solifugis don't get told this either, so they end up thinking that they've died after perhaps a week or so of getting one. And it's like, actually no, it's just gone into molt. Unless it smells really bad because they're quite soft bodied, leave it alone. Kind of thing. So and chances are it's molting.
They're a properly odd little species, but yeah, really cool. Aaron, what's your spookiest, scariest species?
I got two. So one kind of real world. They're both real world, but one that you're
no mythical creatures.
No, one that you're likely to come across, and one that you are never ever going to come across, apart from maybe dead in a museum. So the one that you will come across is tawny owls. Now, I don't find them scary, nor do I find their vocalizations scary. However, I have to admit, on a late night kind of walk, just to see what you can find, especially when you like certain times of year when you start getting the low hanging clouds and the fog and mist and up on Exmoor.
That look like an episode of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, standard episode of Scooby-Doo. Yeah, you hear you get the unexpected sound of the tawny owl's call. I'll admit that's made me jump in the past, not expecting it and going, oh bloody hell.
That and vixens.
Yeah, you did mention vixens.
Awful sound. Lovely creature, absolutely awful sound.
Tawny owls, beautiful, lovely animal that I have no problem with. I really do like them. It's just if you're not expecting it. The other one that you won't ever come across is I'm gonna have to look up the name again now because I can't remember how to pronounce it. But anyway.
All right. Well, whilst you frantically look for your phone, I'll go with mine.
Go for it.
So mine comes in. It's not an animal that is in any way scary. It's an emu, but it comes from a spooky situation. So years ago, in high school, we went on a trip to Monarto, which is the open plains zoo in Adelaide or in South Australia, but this one's out in the countryside. So it's the big open plains zoo. It's a bit like Whipsnade,
right?
A bit bigger. And we were camping there as part of like a school thing. And one of the keepers took us out on a night walk, and he basically put us out on this trail in the sort of like native species area, because we'd released bilbies earlier in the day, and he placed us individually along this track, and he said the whole point of this is to just listen to the sounds of the night and, just listen to what's around you, stargaze. And he was going to do like a loop and come pick us up. That's all well and good. And we sort of sat there and it's very peaceful, almost nothing. But then all of a sudden you can hear footsteps behind you. Now, keep in mind as well that they had African painted dog, lion, hyena. And you think, I know that they're not out and we're sat probably nowhere near them. But what if all the fences are down? What if a lion is sneaking up on me? What the hell is that sound? And, you're sitting there and you're progressively getting a bit more like, okay, this thing's getting closer. It's getting closer. And then I sort of got up and sort of looked around and, and then there's just this emu just wandered out onto the track and stuff. Ended up having a heart attack because an emu was just wandering past.
But it's ingrained in you.
Oh yeah,
the Australian side of you is ingrained to fear emus since you lost
because
the war.
There's a war. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I was thinking, oh god, it's coming for me finally.
Could have been an emu with a gun.
It could have been. Yeah, it was sneaking up behind me with its tiny little wings to sort of like get me. But yeah, I'd say that was the spookiest animal.
That animal that I was trying to work out how, because I can't pronounce it. I've got its name now. It's Thanatophorestes degrutum. Degrutum, which is a species of tyrannosaurid, relatively recently discovered, and its name means death harvester.
Nice.
Which I think is cool.
That's a good name.
That's a scary name, Thanatophorestes.
Yeah. Well, that will be up on our Facebook page for you guys to add to, and maybe even some of those suggestions of spookiest animal might make it into next year's Halloween list. So
predicting a lot of Australians saying emu.
Yeah, it'll be emu. We've not even done emu yet.
You don't understand. You weren't there.
The terror. All right. Well, that now brings us to the point in the episode where we say thank you to we're going to say spooky Patreons.
Spooky Patreons, yeah.
So, Aaron, who are our spooky Patreons?
That's right, yeah. So every week we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters. These are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are grateful beyond words. And those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Chelsea McKee, Connie P, Nick to Nick, and Justin Knife. Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us here in the Natural History Cupboard to improve things in a myriad of ways. And we really cannot thank you enough. Now, we appreciate all the support that all of the cupboard dwellers give us, whether you do that by listening or sharing, subscribing, watching, reviewing. Reviewing is really important, or just commenting hello in the comments section to keep us up in the algorithms. Whatever way you help us out, we're super grateful for. But if you feel we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, you can do so via 2 different tiers. That's the Animal Ambassadors and the Nature Nerds. And you can find out more about those tiers at the Patreon site itself. But with that all said, I think just once again, thank you so much.
Massive thank you. And of course, I'm going to say a massive thank you to you, Phil, for coming on and being our third for this one. Is there anything you want to plug that you've got coming up?
Well, thanks for the invite. And coming up after this, so just after Halloween, Saturday the 2nd of November, me and my parents are hosting the second ever Mildenhall Halloween Invertebrate Show. So it's in Mildenhall in Suffolk. So Invertebrate Show is being sponsored by Spar Spiders, and there's going to be a reptile display there, fancy dress competitions, and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, great fun day out if you're in that area. I'll also just quickly plug, I have a website now as well. So as well as doing YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, I also have a website where I sell my homebred invertebrates and post them out to you.
Nice.
Oh, very cool. And we always look forward to seeing you at different invert shows that we've managed to get to.
Yeah, anyone who wants to go to your invert show, just a word of advice from me that for this coming one, if you want to enter that costume,
you're going to have to
make sure you order more than 2 weeks in advance, and don't use any shipping company that might be named after a certain Greek god who's far better at his job than they are.
Oh well, I mean, you never know. By the point that we get to Phil's invert show, yours might have turned up.
I'll be there in costume.
So yeah, there you go. Well, thank you very much, Phil, for coming along. It's been really good. We enjoyed the Gila Monster.
It's been nice to actually host you actually in the cupboard, because the last few times we've spoken to you has been it's been remote, hasn't it? To like where
we're still remote.
Well, it's still remote, but you're actually you are being beamed
into the cupboard.
into the cupboard here with the skull and everything now. So as opposed to my living room.
Yeah. And that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode and the end of this year's Halloween episode. Big thank you to everyone who's listened, watched, and like, subscribe, comment, all of that usual stuff. Trick or treat. Tell people as you're going around, go and listen to a spooky episode of the Natural History Cupboard. So it pretty much brings us to the end, doesn't it? So
it does. And
we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
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 This is not the episode you're looking for. That would be a bad thing to
say. One does not simply go to Mordor without trick-or-treating on Barber.
This is not the trick-or-treating you're looking for.